G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach Sword Play. Today we have the first of our pre-season team reviews, and look, we normally start off with A, B, C, but I'm starting right off at the opposite end today because we have someone on the channel that, in my humble opinion, has the best insight and the best knowledge about the Western Bulldogs, bar none. This is a man that has over 23,000 followers on Facebook on his Western Bulldogs forum. He runs the best Western Bulldogs podcast out there on the planet. If you watched my team review from last year for the Doggies, you'll know exactly who this man is. I have Mattie from Inside the Kennel, mate. Thank you so much for joining us. How have you been, legend?
Pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I get pretty excited this time of the year. Cricket's in the rearview mirror, so bring on the footy. And I'm really looking forward to our chat today. So thanks so much for inviting me.
I appreciate it, mate. The pleasure is all ours. And the feedback we got from your team preview last year was just phenomenal, mate. So I absolutely had to have you on. Now, before we actually get into the preview itself, you run a fantastic YouTube channel, and people can already see here down the bottom some of the guests that you get. Mate, you're the best of the best. Tell us a little bit about the great work that you do, not only on YouTube, but also on Facebook as well, Matty.
Oh yeah, thanks. So look, the channel. Firstly, I started it out to try and interview past players and really tell their story. So you know, I've got interviews from players who played in the 1930s. Right to current time. So if you're interested in your history, you don't have to be a Western Bulldogs supporter. In fact, they talk about their hatred of Collingwood back in the 30s and 40s. So if you want to hear some really juicy stories, these are great podcasts just to listen to. And it really gives some great insights around psychology as well of champions. So that was sort of my passion. I love storytelling. But I also do on the channel, and this will interest particularly Supercoach fans. Reviews of all training. So match simulation, you'll see footage on there and a lot of commentary and feedback in terms of how people are going. So there's a bit for everyone on there. So I really encourage people to go type in Inside the Kennel, have a look, and you'll see a heck of a lot of videos, and hopefully it appeals to you. And the other thing that you mentioned was the Western Bulldogs forum. So I type all my match reviews. So all the simulations are on there. If you prefer reading rather than listening to me droning on, have a read of each of the players. I'll tell you what positions they are, how they're tracking, and hopefully that's informative.
Absolutely. You've got all bases covered there, mate, from the written articles to the podcast to the videos. Absolutely elite. And thank you so much for actually sharing all this knowledge, because I know that you're down at training a lot. I know that you know the club inside out, the players intricately. So it is an absolute pleasure and an honor to delve deep inside your Bulldogs brain today, mate. So look, I'm excited. So let's get into it. We'll have a bit of a general discussion about what's been happening during the preseason. We know that it seems like every single player from every club in the preseason's burning it up, lighting it up, career best numbers, all the rest. We'll also talk about some of those players that may be in the rehab group. Maybe they're not traveling too well at the moment. And then we'll get into some individual player profiles, Matty. So one thing we do need to mention with our super coaches here is the buys. So the Bulldogs only have the one bye this year. They obviously don't play in round zero. So the buys they share it with are Carlton, North, and the Power. So three very relevant teams in Supercoach, Matty. But we need to dive deep and let's talk about who's not traveling so well at the moment. Do you have any concerns about particular players, the way they've been looking on the track so far in 2025, Matty?
Yeah, look, there's three players in particular who have been on the sidelines right through the summer. So there's certainly some question marks. The first one I'll raise is Adam Treloar. So he's had a calf niggle. Now, he was All-Australian last year, but it's been really common. It's a trend over the last 3 years that he's played quite a modified pre-season. They're just really cautious about his loading and particularly soft tissue history. So they're being ultra cautious. He hasn't participated in any of the match sims, but I am told that he'll be starting to play in the next 1 to 2 weeks. He's putting in a heck of a lot of running on the sideline, so he looks sharp. But certainly no ball in hand action at the moment. I wouldn't be concerned with him, but it's just a watch to sort of see that he's a slow burn as normal. The second player is Cody Waitman. Now, about 2 weeks ago, he rolled over and took a mark at sort of a diving slips catch and whacked his shoulder. So they're being really cautious because, again, he's had some elbow and shoulder history in the past. So he's been doing a heck of a lot of running. I've actually watched him doing his sort of his craft around goal kicking and some work with Norton off on the sideline. And he doesn't look to be at all restricted, but again, a cautious sort of wait and see. He's done a body of work through the December, so it's a block of about 3 weeks where he hasn't been participating with the main group. We're expecting him to be back in the camp that they're going to do in Queensland and playing, so I wouldn't be any concern around Cody Waitman, but he's been on the sideline. The big concern is Norton. Aaron Norton has had some knee and calf troubles and has not touched the footy at all with the main group. Right through the whole of summer. So given the fact that, we've got Jamara, and I'll mention him just briefly, Jamara Ugle-Hagan on the sidelines as well, our forward line is going to structure up quite differently. So I'll talk about some players who there might be some surprise packets in a moment. But Norton, I'm told, is 1 to 2 weeks away from resuming. But certainly with the lack of touch he's had, there may be a little bit of a concern around him. So they're the main three. And just briefly, I mentioned Jamara Ugle-Hagan. He's obviously having some time away from the club. He's doing a heck of a lot of boxing. So there's speculation around his immediate future. What I would also just like to sort of give a shout out to Jamara to say, it's such a hard sport to play, AFL footy, and there's so much scrutiny. So if, our listeners, if you get an opportunity just to sort of send a positive message or not sort of immerse yourself in some of that negative talk, we'll give the love to your clubs back, because there's always 2 or 3 players who are struggling mentally, and, just a positive comment, can set that kind of culture, I think, in the footy world for us to be sort of a bit more positive around it. We want to see champions on the field, and I'm hoping Jamara will get back at some stage.
Really, really well said. And look, I think it's really easy for Bulldog supporters themselves, opposition supporters, to really, sink the heels in and really give them a hard time. But as you mentioned, mate, it's a tough game to play. Obviously, I've never played at the highest level itself, but love your positive attitude. We're all about the positive attitudes here on the Saw Play podcast. So great idea. If you want to send a message to Jamara, a nice positive message, it may go a really, really long way to helping the young man get back to where he needs to be. But really, really interesting. Thank you very much for that, Matty. And probably the big thing I've taken out of that is it may be a bit of a restructured forward line when it comes to the big. So we'll get to the forwards very, very soon, mate. Now, let's get into some positive news. Who is absolutely burning the track up? Has there been any particular players that really caught your eye so far during the preseason, mate?
Yeah. Okay, first one, big Sammy Darcy, 206 centimetres of pure meat. He just flies through. He takes it the highest point, and it's been unstoppable. They've played Liam Jones on him in match simulations, and he's a hard man to get around. But Sammy just does his thing. He's going to go from strength to strength. And now, given the fact that there's question marks around Norton and Jamara won't be there, he's going to be a stay home forward. So you might get less sort of ruck points for Sammy, but certainly, he'll be amongst the goals. And, I would expect him to be our sort of leading goal kicker and our focal point this year. He's been smashing it. I mean, in the match sims, in a 15-minute burst, he can just smash on 2 or 3 goals very quickly and then repeat that again. So he's been kicking bags. And actually watching the players on the sideline, they're whooping and laughing and just sort of, smashing their thighs. It's sort of even being surprised at what they see. And that's always a really good sign. So Sammy Darcy, love him. Next person is Riley West. Now, in Waitman's absence, West has been sort of crept up as being sort of our main small forward goal sneak. He kicked 5 goals in a 75-minute match sim 2 days ago. So that 5 goals, that's basically in less than 3 quarters, and missed another one. He should have kicked from 40 out directly in front. He's taken good marks, real opportunistic, reads the play beautifully. Also been going into the midfield a little bit as well and spending some time in there. So I think you will probably see a big spike in Riley's performance. And the other one, sort of maybe a bit of a surprise packet, is Lachie McNeil. Now, he played a number of games last year as a small forward. his handling of the ball below his knees has just been so crisp. I think he's really worked on his craft, and he'll certainly be in our best 22, and might be a sort of a low level player that you can pick up and get some value from.
Fantastic, mate. I'll tell you what, it does make me laugh watching Sam Darcy play sometimes as well. I'm guessing those players on the sidelines are going, thank goodness we're actually playing with this bloke and we don't have to try to work out how to stop him, because when the ball gets at its highest point and he puts those arms up, honestly, who is going to stop him? And how can you stop this guy? I think he's just going to get stronger as well. We know what his height's like, but, you know, the more years that he spends in the gym, I'd tell you what, in another 2 to 3 years' time, what a scary, scary prospect. And I think someone that's going to have multiple All-Australian blazers and could potentially go down is one of the best Bulldogs that we've ever seen. And talk about one of the best Bulldogs we've ever seen, Scotty West's son. Isn't that great to see Ryley getting a real crack at it? You know, I don't know. I've never known where his best position is. Is it going to be in that midfield? You've always had so much competition there. So the fact that he's maybe looking for that niche forward spot, I think that's really positive, because I think most Bulldogs fans would love to see him actually on the park, particularly being a father's son. There's always a bit of romance in there, isn't there, mate?
Big time. Yeah, absolutely. No, he's gone to another level. He can play midfield. He's a little bit untidy when it's congested. So having a bit more space on the forward line, he can find the footy, and just with that just fraction more time, his finishing has been a lot better. And I think we'll capitalise as a forward flanker or a forward pocket with Flea Waitman this year for sure.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. So we've talked about who's struggling, who's really catching right. Let's get into some individual players now and quickly touch on some of them. We will start off in defence, mate, and our man Bailey Dale, 28 years old. The 23 games last year, early on the season, did fall out of favour after a subpar performance. Bevo started him as sub, but I tell you what, mate, after that, his next month, he went bang with massive scores, a month worth of 30-plus possessions. We know what his talent's like. My main question to you, mate, is A, do you think he'll continue to be the main man that will distribute out of half-back? And B, do you think he's still going to be the main man on kicking duties as well?
Yep, great question. He needed the stick last year from Bevo, and it just ignited him, didn't it? And certainly in the All-Australian squad, I can't see him slowing down. All the match simulations, he's been the number one kicker-outer. So him, next is Bramble, and then Jason Johannesson. So those three are taking the kicking duties. And they've owned it, but he's the sort of the number one man to take them out. What I love about all of those three players, and it looks like it's a mandate from the coach, is they kick it, they do it like a short one, and then they get off and distribute again, particularly Bailey Dale, because he's such a good user of the footy. He just gets into the next position for the chain, and off he goes. And his meters gain sort of game style is really going to be important for the way that we sort of set up our template. Really quick slingshot running, and Bailey Dale just uses it beautifully. So he'll do a short kick in, get past the handball or the next chain, and off we race. They want to get the footy in the hands of Bailey Dale, Ed Richards, Jason Johannesson, these sort of users, Freijah, players who will use the footy well. So yeah, look out. He's going to be burning it.
There's nothing better than getting the 1-2s out of defence. That's what we want, Matty. We want as many possessions as possible from these blokes. And quickly going back to last year, I got some notes here. So round 4, it was that dirty afternoon against Geelong. Only the 47 Supercoach points, sub the week after. But how about this, mate? So from round 7 to 9, 175 points, 39 touches, 15 marks and a goal, 132 points, 30 touches, 9 marks and 2 goals, another 29 touches, another 30 touches. So you're right, this bloke can get a lot of the football. And what we love best about him is that lethal boot. We can see this bloke do 50 to 60 metre bullets. We're not talking about those high kicks there, those absolute bullets. He's so super dangerous and can also float down and loves to kick a goal, doesn't he? Run around the back and kick from outside 50, send it straight through the sticks. So there's actually a lot to like about Bailey Dale. And I think in regards to his price, there's a little bit of value there as well, given the fact that he was subbed and obviously subbed out last year, mate. So Lots of positive things there. And I think if we take a look at the kick-in chart, it absolutely agrees with you there. We can see Dale Bramble and Jason Johannesson. You see that pretty much staying the same, do you, mate? They're going to be the big three in regards to your kick-ins?
Yeah, exactly those three. That's the order in terms of how they've been taking the footy from the kick-ins. Yeah, particular. But Dale, as I said, he's owned it. He probably is taken 70% of those kick-ins from what I can garner.
Beautiful, mate. The last defender we're quickly going to touch on here is a potential breakout option, and it's Joel Freijah. You just mentioned before that he's a good user of the ball, good distributor. His real breakout game last year was in round 23 versus North, 31 touches, 13 marks for 136 Supercoach points. So I suppose the big question that everyone's asking at the moment is, what role do you think he's set for in 2025? And do you think he's a lock for the best 22 or still very much on the fringes in 2025, Matty?
He's a certainty for best 22. He had an incredible first season. He looks like a seasoned player, and all the past players I've spoken to just love his shape. He looks like a mature body. Plays beautifully. He's very composed. What he can do is switch defence to attack really quickly, and they love that. That usually takes time for a young player, but he's got that. So his footy IQ is exceptional. He's a beautiful user. He came second in the 2K time trials on both occasions, the pre-Christmas and the post-Christmas. So his running capacity's improved, and we're looking to sort of, or he's certainly one, in our 7 defenders. So whether he plays a sort of a back pocket or a running half back type, I eventually see him as a wingman. Or moving into the midfield, but right for now, he's he's learning from JJ, from Johannesson and Dale and Bramble, these types, and he's going to be a sort of a lethal quartet with those 3 players running off halfback. So we've loved what we've seen from him. They, his teammates love him, and 100% he'll be named in the team. If he's fit, he'll play every game.
Good to hear. Good to hear. So for those people that are taking a little look at Joel, there is certainly competition for obviously points down back with your Dales, your Brambles and your JJs. But Mattie's giving him a fair wrap up there. Very talented player with high footy IQ. So who knows what he could produce this year? Maybe a bit of a risky pick at the price, but who knows, Mattie? Great to know that at least he's going to look to be in that best 22 from week to week.
Yep.
All right. Let's get into the big boys. Now, if you ask me who my favourite non-lines player in the comp is, it is very, very hard to go past this man. It's the Bont, your captain, 29 years old. Unbelievably, still doesn't have a Brownlow wrapped around his neck. I don't know. This is just one of the biggest injustices in the game, in my opinion, Matty, because this bloke just does it all. I love him. When the Dogs are down, he says, come on, boys, jump on my back. He kicks goals, contested possessions, just those little things like the contested knock-ons he gets for extra points as well. Now, he's one of the most expensive players we can get in the game, Matt. He's almost going to set us back 700K, 681,000. But personally, I reckon he's worth every cent. Is it just as simple as lock this man in, Matty? He's just going to continue to do what he's done for the last few years?
Lock him in if, he's dominating or, every single match simulation that we've had so far this summer. He's got the big sort of hair sort of setup going on at the moment. He looks like John Rambo. He's wearing the headband, and he looks like he's going to war. But just control space and time. I just watch him. He knows exactly where to put the ball to demand his teammates to get to. Wins his own every single contest. Breaks away. He's just as elite as you could possibly see, and he certainly won't be slowing down. He's absolutely at the apex of his performance chart, age 29, and just watch him dominate. His body looks, immaculate. You're going to love what you see from him. Lock him in.
Beautiful, and he's just so consistent from week to week. You very, very rarely see Bont play a poor game, and I think a poor game by his standards. The majority of other players of the comp would be really happy with that performance. I think, Matty, he is just an absolute jet. So, in my opinion, I think he's just an easy lock and a perma captain option for our sides each week.
Great.
The next bloke had such a phenomenal season last year, but unfortunately, I've already touched on him earlier, and it wasn't with the players that are burning up the track. He hasn't had the best preseason to date, but playing 22 games last year, I think, was a real positive.
Yeah.
The big question for me, Matty, once he's back to full fitness, do you think that he's going to continue to be one of the main CBA mids, or do you think there's a chance that maybe he gives a little bit of that inside time to other players and spends a little bit more time on the outside? Do you have any views or opinions on how you think his CBAs are going to line up this year when he is fit and available, Matty?
Yep, absolutely. So, as we touched on, he always has a limited preseason, so nothing to worry about. He'll be able to. He's so professional; he'll seamlessly come back in. But I see this year as being somewhat of a transition year with our midfield, with Libba and also Treloar being age 31. We're going to be having to give more time to the likes of Sanders, and I know we'll speak about him shortly. Ed Richards is going to be spending a lot more time in the middle, and Bont has got that locked. So those three plus our ruck are going to be sort of rotating with Treloar and Liberatore. So ultimately, you've got 5 players who'll be spending the time in the midfield for the centre bouncers. So yeah, he'll spend most of his time there. But, we know he can play on the wing, play an outside role, and that's been sort of a gap area, that we're trying to fill and find somebody who fits that quota. So don't be surprised to see when Ad comes out of the midfield that he might spend some time on a halfback flank, on a wing, or even a forward flank, just a small burst, just to start lifting those other players that I mentioned. And when I speak about Sanders, you'll realise what I'm sort of suggesting there.
Very, very exciting, mate, because I know that lots of people who are traditionally a little bit concerned about starting with Adam Treloar, particularly with that soft tissue history as well. So if there's some other blokes that are going to be getting a little bit more time in there, I think that is music to Supercoach's ears, mate. Now, the next bloke, this is what I'm most excited about. I haven't given a team update yet, Matty, but this bloke, Ed Richards, is currently sitting in my midfield. Now only 1.1% of coaches agree with me at the moment that he's looking like a decent selection. But looking back to last year, I was such a big fan of him in the midfield. I think he gave you a real different look in there. We can see his pre-buy average 95.3, post-buy with 102.5. I think there is also a fair bit of value in his price, because if we think back to round 11 last year, where he got injured at half time, where he unfortunately had that concussion, he was BOG up until that point, mate. 19 touches, 70 odd points. And it was that game where I really thought to myself, this bloke, he can really take the next step. And if we think back to the team preview from last year, this is a bloke that you mentioned and said, he's the man. He's going to be such a huge part of our future, all Australian caliber, all Australian potential. And from what we saw last year, when he did enter that midfield, it was absolutely all that. He's an absolute star, an absolute gun. But Matty, I'm so keen to hear your thoughts on this, mate. Firstly, do you think he's going to continue to play that inside mid role? I think you touched on it before. Will those minutes increase? I'm excited, Matty. Please give me good news about my pod, Ed Richards.
Yeah, minutes will increase. So Bont's the lock. He's the next. Treloar and Libba will be there then, and Mix, and then and Sanders. So they're the order. Richards is a lock in there. They love getting the ball in his hands. He can find his own footy. But just watching it over the summer, they've been practicing a few things. They're expecting that Richards will be tagged, and that's usually a pretty good sign that they know that opposition need to shut him down. So they've been playing Brew, who's one of our train-on players, who we're probably going to take with our last pick. They've been playing Brew on Ed Richards. Now, he's just trying to absolutely wear him as a second skin to see how Ed will work through that. And so they've been practicing in the sims of trying to block Brew, give Ed some time, but also see how he handles that heat. And he's responded beautifully. On the outside, left and right foot, he just hits them up like a Leon Cameron did of yesteryear. He's just beautiful and elite. He can explode out of the pack. So they're really going to support him and back him in. And I think, you'll find that anybody who's taking a mark, they're giving it off to Ed, and they're blocking anyone just trying to chop Ed off. So expect it to be in his hands a lot. If it is, we're going to be hitting up Sammy Darcy with silver service. So, yeah, absolutely. He'll be playing inside mid. His upside is, he'll just be given an opportunity to thrive and fly. And with that really positive confidence that he takes out of last year, I reckon you're going to continue to see him smash it.
That's brilliant. And it seems like not only may he have more confidence in his own ability, but his teammates and coaches have a lot of confidence in him. If they're preparing for this bloke to be copying a tag, then obviously they're assuming that he's going to be absolutely lighting it up when the season starts. And I love the fact that they're planning around that, because as a young man, and look, he's spent, what was it, maybe half to 3/4 of last year as an inside midfielder, but as a young man now entering that second season as a full-time midfielder, he hasn't had to worry about copping too much attention before. And without preparing for that, I'm a little bit worried, because he's well, what do I do here? I haven't planned for it. I haven't trained for it. But the fact that they've got someone like Brew, a mature body who's been around the traps, obviously in the lower leagues in the VFL, but the fact that he's wearing him like a glove, and Ed's learning how to deal with that nice and early on the preseason, as well as his teammates also understand, well, how can we best help Ed to get a bit more freedom so he can get the ball in his hands? I think that's a real positive. A little bit scary about a potential tag. We don't want our players to get tagged that we're selecting, but the fact that his teammates around him will know and will be willing to actually give him a chop out, I think that's a bit of a positive in itself, Matty. And that's the thing with the Bulldogs mids, when Treloar's on fire, when the Bont's on fire, there's so many blokes that you could actually lock down, so many options in your midfield, which I think is fantastic, Matty. And one thing that I do quickly want to look at is the CBAs from last year. Now, it's a little bit small here, but I just did want to really highlight Ed Richards here, because if we look to round 6 and 7, that's when Libba actually exited the side, and that's where these CBAs really started to rise. So high 70s into a 90s. Libba comes back for the next week. CBAs go down for Richards, but then Libba's out again. Those CBAs go right back up. Do you think this is a point in time where they were almost forced into trialing Richards, or do you think it's something that they had prepared for and were maybe just waiting for the right time last year, Matty? Was this always in their plans, Ed Richards, or?
No, it wasn't in their plans. We'd love 2 or 3 Ed Richards, but the opportunity arose out of necessity, and he just took it. He's got the attributes to play anywhere, but ultimately they couldn't see. You can't displace a flying Tom Liberatore and a Treloar and a Bont. So he just had to use his assets off half back, and it's incredible to watch him off half back. But out of necessity, as you say, Libba went out, he came in, and he's just basically said, you can't even come close to forcing me out now. So he's elevated himself behind the Bont as our next person in there. And as you sort of pointed out, he's got a point of difference. He just glides. But his use of the footy is off the charts. And then you've got the grunt of Libba to sort of back that up. Matt Kennedy's another one that can go in that I didn't mention as well into the midfield. We got him from Carlton, big body, and he's one of those players but when he's been in there, I've watched him just really blocking for Ed as well. So you probably might see a little bit of a Matt Kennedy. But yeah, those statistics are telling the story there. But certainly expect Ed to climb a couple of rungs.
Fantastic, mate. Music to my ears. Now, I was quickly going to touch on Tim English, but there's a couple of other forwards that we've got in Matty Kennedy and Ryley Sanders, who we've just mentioned, who I think, we may see their names on this CBA chart as well, mate. So let's get into Matt Kennedy. Obviously come across from Carlton, 414,400, about 1.8% of coaches currently have him selected in their team. Now, I think you've touched on it already. What role will he look to play in 2025? Potentially a little bit of midfield time, and I'm guessing a little bit of forward time. Would you agree with that, Matty? That sort of mid-forward type split for Kennedy this year?
Yep, spot on. So it's really hard to get a bit of a handle on it, because in the match sims, they're basically playing 4 on 4 mids. So he's always been on one of the teams. Working usually on Ed Richards' team. So, which, might be a bit of a clue that, as we said, they're using him as a blocker and using them in tandem. But he's also then being released to the half forward flank. He can hit the scoreboard, just really smart. I guess he's probably played maybe 120 games now, maybe slightly more. So he's a seasoned veteran. He's composed. He's strong. I see him in our best 22 certainly. But yeah, just in terms of the role, I would imagine he's most likely going to be sort of as a high half forward and just drifting down and helping the midfield out, but being able to hit the scoreboard when necessary. So yeah, just a smart player.
Excellent. So it seems like very much a similar role to what he was playing at his previous club in the Blues, mate. And the other bloke that you've touched on a couple of times already, super exciting talent, Ryley Sanders. Now, had a bit of an up and down start to his career, found himself with the sub vest. There was a bit of outside noise about his attitude. I don't know if that was blowing up a lot or too much. We got to remember he's a young man. In my opinion, he was just keen to play. He was keen to get out there, keen to make an impact. But from what we've heard so far, Matty, it seems like he's really going well at the moment and looking for some increased mid-time. Is that the way that you see his 2025 season panning out and really becoming more of an important cog in that midfield mix?
Yeah, they're going to transition him in. He's a long-term future. Can I say, he's getting his hands on the ball at centre tap-outs more than anyone. So his positioning is incredible, exceptional. He gets first hands on it before Bont. And what he does is he just extracts it out. He gets caught a lot, but just doesn't release the ball. If he's held in the clinches, he somehow is able to sort of to extract it out, and then he breaks and he gets on a chain. So he's a serious chain player. His aerobic capacity is excellent. He's lost a couple of kilos, so that's picked his pace up a little bit. That was probably one of the elements last year. That was one of his chinks to his arm. He wasn't quite able to go with those midfielders with the speed sort of side, and also just being able to run up and down and be that defensive option. So he's worked on his aerobic capacity. His speed certainly increased. He's got all the footy smarts. His hands are amazing and elite in close. But as I say, he'll then get on those second chains that you say is all important. I absolutely love him. And I would be expecting him to play a lot of midfield time. Don't forget, Treloar and Liberatore are on the wrong side of 30. So there's a possibility, if things don't, follow a pattern of those sort of age players, that they may be in and out. So he's the next person that will come and fill that role. They want him to be in there. So it's a great opportunity. But he's been hitting the scoreboard as well, can I say, when he's on a half forward flank, just straightens up. One of those players who just finds space and time, when he's on the forward line and just straightens, beautiful disposal, doesn't waste a possession. So Ryley Sanders, I absolutely love him. At 339, he might be one of those players that you just say, wow, what a breakout season in his second year.
Oh, we love hearing this, Matty. A breakout contender, because you can see 3.9%. So he's got a higher percentage than some of the other players that we've looked at already, but still that is very, very low at this stage of the season. So for anyone that is looking at a potential Bulldogs breakout, we have this man here, Ryley Sanders, 339,100, has DPP status, can be selected as a forward and a mid. The great thing that Matty touched on there as well is that even when he's not in the midfield and he's playing more of that forward role, he's having a real impact, and that's what we really, really want to see. And you're right, couple of these players, particularly in Treloar and Libba, at their age, and even if we look back to the last year with those concussion issues, I was really worried that may potentially be the end for him. And I love Libba. I just love everything about him. I love the tats to the quirky personality, and he's someone that you just love to play with. I'd just love to run out in the ground knowing that Libba's right next to me. He'd have my back. You know what he's going to do week upon week. So given the fact that he's a little bit older, potentially has some issues, this bloke's the next generation. He's the next generation. And it just makes sense, doesn't it, to start to give him some more minutes as some of these older blokes may be phased out. So, Matty, very, very exciting times for Ryley Sanders. Now, for some reason, the formatting has absolutely gone on me here, Matty, but we've still got all the info we know. And this is another bloke who warrants a fair bit of discussion this year for Supercoaches, because Tim English at 581,900 is a bargain buy for what he produced in 2023. He set you back over 700K at one point, and he was just unattainable. You just couldn't get to him, Timmy English. Last year, his numbers were down across the board. Not that he had a terrible type season, just that it wasn't near as good as that terrific year he had before. So we'll start off, Matty, with how he's been tracking in the pre-season. Has Timmy been looking good to date, running well, involved in all the drills and the match sims?
Yeah, so this time last year, he hadn't touched the footy. He had ongoing protocol symptoms through December, January. So he just ran like Forrest Gump over that time. But there's no substitute for being involved in the drills and the match play. And he just didn't get his hand on the footy. And I think that translated in terms of what we saw. Probably towards the end, without having the stats in front of me, he tapered towards the end of the year. He just tired. I don't think you'll see that this year. He hasn't missed a session. He's been every single session. So that bodes well for him to be able to sort of get back to his very, very best. The interesting thing, I've been a little bit underwhelmed with his performance in match play, just in terms of his intensity. And I don't say that very often. He's certainly, he's been out there and he's held himself reasonably well. But in some moments, I just sort of see that maybe he's dropped his concentration and some of the other rucks have gotten the better of him in certain contests. So I just think it's an intensity thing and some of that attitudinal stuff that I hope Tim can be at his best, because when he is, he's unbelievable. He covers so much ground. He's just a beautiful mark, and his tap work has improved a lot. That's an area that probably. Yeah, he's probably been beaten a lot in ruck tap outs, and maybe that's also sort of contributed to some lower scores. That's an area of his game he's really improved, I've noticed, and his ability to get it down to Sanders and Bont has been unbelievable over the preseason. So you'll probably see that area of his game improve. And we talked about the domino effect as well of Jamara going out of the team. So I want to touch on that with the sort of a Tim English lens on this. With Jamara going out, we need Sam Darcy to stay as a stay-at-home forward. So he's less likely. Sam's less likely to partner Tim in the ruck and give him so much of a chop out. Whether that means Tim has to spend more time in the ruck is to be seen. But there's a fair chance of that. However, the other option is, and this might surprise a few people, there's been a player, Ryan Gardiner. He's a bit of a forgotten man. He was drafted as a full forward maybe 6 years ago, but mainly played in defence since his second season. But he's battled injuries over the last 3 years, so we've barely seen him. He's a very good player. He's a dour player and a really adaptable one. They've been playing him as a second ruck against Tim, and he's actually held himself incredibly well against Tim. And that's why I sort of felt a bit underwhelmed with Tim English. But maybe that's being a bit of a disservice to Ryan Gardiner, because he's really surprised me in holding his own. He's playing as a resting forward pocket in Jamara's absence, but then being able to come out and play some ruck time and then go against Tim. So I think they're sort of seeing him as that player who might be able to partner Tim this year. I've been really impressed with Ryan Gardiner. He's hit the scoreboard. He's outbodied even someone like a Rory Lobb on a number of occasions, which has really surprised me. But when he's gone into the ruck, as I said, he's just fought tooth and nail. He's not overly tall. I think he's probably about 197 centimetres. So he's given away maybe 10 centimetres against Tim. But my goodness, he's done a good job. So there's a little bit of a watch there. Will that increase Tim's centre time, or will an opportunity arise from that?
Very, very interesting. I love hearing that, because that second ruck role can be a lucrative role in Supercoach. And Ryan Gardiner, I must admit, Matty, was not even close to the radar. As you mentioned, a bit of a forgotten man. But I'll tell you what, given the fact that he's now got the potential to be able to chop out there, it could actually bring him into some relevance, because I think he's around 140K. Very, very cheap at the moment. So, mate, that is elite. And this is why we've got you on. All the little tidbits there. You did mention as well that he's been working on that tap work, and hopefully he's going to look to win some more ruck contests. So he averaged about 27.3 hitouts, and his hitout win percentage was 36.7. So if you can get that closer to around the 50% mark, then again, extra points on the board, mate. So absolutely brilliant. We want to see a bit more intensity, but things are actually looking, I think, pretty good for Timmy at the moment, mate. All right, Matty. Now let's get into some pup talk. Now, there are a few young guns running around the Whitten Oval at the moment, but there are three blokes that people have been asking me about, and it's Jordan Croft, Sam Davidson, and Jed Busslinger. Now, we'll start off with Jordan Croft, mate. Obviously, a father-son. Have you made any observations about him to date, mate? Is he looking to maybe break into the side? And if so, what position do you think he could be looking at setting himself up for in 2025?
Yeah, so he's over 200 centimeters tall and still growing. And you would think that would be a lock for a
Boy.
key position role, wouldn't you? But he's been playing on the wing. he's on a wing, and yeah, of course. So it's interesting because he's played some good and not so great games. So I think he's certainly learning at Craft. Interestingly, Bevo ran out onto the field and gave him some positional sort of advice mid game the other day. So I think he's sort of quite raw in that. But they're just trying to see, because he's got a real athletic profile. He's a beautiful runner, a really gorgeous fluent kick on the run as well. But he hasn't found a lot of footy on the wing. So I don't think that will be something they persist with, certainly, at this stage. I think he's best suited to play a key position role. So, maybe, just maybe there'll be an opportunity or two, but he's still raw. He's still coming through. I wouldn't imagine he'll play too many games this season, but it'll be a developmental year for him.
Excellent, mate. Excellent. How about the man in the middle, Sam Davidson? Now, we know that there are a few dominoes that are constantly moving in the forward line. Yeah. Has this bloke got any sort of a chance of breaking into the 22? Because as 113,500 forward, he's owned by 8.5%, which has been one of the high percentages we've seen in the player slides today. Give us good news, Matty. Is there a chance that he makes it this year?
Massive chance. In fact, I would say it's almost a certainty. So we've had a real problem with our wing position over the last couple of years. We've played Williams there, but since losing Lockie Hunter and even Caleb Daniels sort of not locking down that sort of role, and Jack McRae, we've been on the search and we've found our man. So he played in the VFL last year. He was predominantly a forward. Now he's 6'3", he's 190 centimeters. But he runs like the wind. He's an elite runner. So we've put him on the wing. We've moved him from a forward flank. He kicked a bag of 6 and a bag of 4 against Port Melbourne last year. So he can find the sticks. And even on the wing, he's been able to hit the scoreboard. So he's played predominantly wing time and absolutely dominated. I mean, dominated every single game. He's been the best in every one of it. So some of his positional stuff, I think, is a little bit of a learning, particularly in the stoppages. Where because he may get exposed at times. So I think they're really trying to accelerate his education in that at the elite level. And if they can get the positioning right as a winger, because, you've got to be able to shut down territory and space as well as make it. And I think that's an area of his game he's really, really working on. If they get that right, he's going to be a massive surprise packet. And as I said, because he's fast, because he just does not stop running, his aerobic capacity is probably second or third in our club. He's able to get to the next contest. So I've just found him working back and forward. He's hitting the scoreboard, as I see, but then I see him in the defensive 50, just being a link player. I absolutely love him. He stands out. He's got these, beautiful flowing locks, not unlike yourself. And I think he's going to make a name for himself very quickly. At 113, watch him get a game. He'll be playing round 1 unless something goes drastically wrong, and you'll see him on a wing.
That is absolutely fantastic, because for those people that haven't been really paying attention, I think a lot of people just assume that he'd be playing up forward. As you mentioned, last year he kicked bags of goals and played predominantly that forward role. But the fact that he's now moved on to a wing, I think that is fantastic news. Yep. And you're right, it can be a tough position to learn. So that positional sort of stuff, that's very much expected. But the fact he can run like the wind, he looks fit at the moment, a tall sort of a lad. What a pickup, mate. What an absolutely fantastic pickup. And what a great pickup he's going to be for our Supercoach sides.
Richmond Footy Club have let him go there, so we'll take him.
Absolutely. Their loss and your gain, mate.
Yeah.
All right, Matty. Now, the last bloke here, Jed Busslinger. The reason why I actually bring this fella up is because a good mate of mine was actually in a lovely Greek restaurant and ran into the Bont, said he's a lovely fella, a very, very big unit, but he just asked him one question. Said, I didn't want to bother him too much, but just a quick question. Give me one breakout contender. Who should I select in my Supercoach side? Someone that's, under the 200K mark. And the bloke that he actually mentioned was Jed Busslinger. He said, yeah, I think this guy's got a really, really bright future. What have you seen from Busslinger in the preseason, and what role do you see him potentially playing if he breaks into the 22 this year, mate?
Yeah, so there's a third tall defender position that is going to be fought out between a James O'Donnell, a Jed Busslinger, Buku Kamas. Now they're all fighting for it. Because obviously Rory Lobb and Liam Jones are our two talls. So who's that third person going to be? They're more likely to sort of swing towards an O'Donnell because he's got more of a more versatility and more of an athletic profile. Whereas Jed Busslinger is a little bit of a slower mover, reads the ball beautifully in the air, but he's more sort of just a sort of a composed player rather than an explosive one. So playing the likes of a Jones and a Busslinger in the same team might be a bit samey. So that's sort of the question mark that that they'll look at. So depending on who's fit and the availability might determine how many games Busslinger plays. But he's got a future. Like I think he might have been a top 12 pick, something around that sort of mark. And he spent the last 2 years plying his craft. His first year, he had a shoulder injury and was really delayed in his start. And last year, I think he won the runner-up best and fairest for Footscray, played every game in the VFL, and just reads the ball beautifully. Is using the ball a lot better. He's really sort of considered with how he brings his teammates into the play. Can transition the ball laterally really cleverly and switch. So it's great with ball in hand. So I like what I see from Jed. I think this year certainly going to see him, whether it's early or not. He's in an arm wrestle, as I say, with those other couple of lads. So it's a toss of the coin stuff. But I'm really buoyant about what he'll become.
Great info, mate. And look, we don't want all of our rookies playing right at the start because we need guys to downgrade to as the season goes on. So look, if he doesn't suit up round 1, round 0, whenever it is, I think that's okay. At least we've got someone potentially that we can look for, just chuck him in the bank for now. And hopefully when he gets an opportunity, someone that we might be able to downgrade to, mate. But hey, the great thing for Bulldogs fans is it seems like you've got many options down there, mate. And competition for spots, I think, is always a really healthy thing at the end of the day, isn't it?
Big time.
Beautiful, mate. We know where to get from when it comes to the Bulldogs, Matty. Again, I cannot thank you enough for coming on today. We've been battling some internet issues. We've been going in and out of reception. So, mate, it's been a mission from mine with this internet connection. But from you, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough for coming on, mate. So before we do let you go, tell us what you've got coming up on your channel, because you did mention off air that you've got some new interviews coming out, some new podcasts. So tell us what we can look forward to apart from your track notes in the next month or two on Inside the Kennel, Matty.
Yeah, thanks. I've got some unbelievably cool, players from yesteryear who are about to come on. I've just finished editing Rowan Smith. Now, Rowan Smith is just, a bolt-on Bulldog man from yesteryear, and his story is incredible. So, if you're driving into work and you want to listen to a story, just listen to the passion of Rowan Smith. I'm releasing that next week, but I've got like the likes of Phil Malin, fabulous shark Phil Malin from the 80s who is coming on. I've got some Indigenous boys as well, Magic Mick McLean and Les Bamblett, who are guns from the 80s as well. And, we talk about issues that are not just footy related, important issues and ones that are dear to the heart of Indigenous people as well. So we really encourage people to jump on and have a listen to that, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So I can't wait to bring some of those. I've got a Chrissy Grant and Calvin Templeton and some guns and legends of our club that I'm looking forward to sharing in the coming months as well. Just one thing I want to mention just before we leave as well. So, I've certainly given a plug to, a couple of the pages that I'm involved with in my channel. I'd love to see opposition supporters jumping on there. But there's also another fantastic resource that people might be curious about. It's called Woof. which is Whitten Oval Online Forum. It's really fantastic for sort of for our track watchers like myself, who sort of give a different perspective of how things are going. So I encourage people to get onto Wolf. Just type in Wolf, have a look, and it might just give you, a slight edge as well. It's, when I'm at the games, I sit down with some of those track watchers who write prolifically on there, and they're really savvy and clever observers. So if you want a little edge, that's another little tip as well.
That is absolutely brilliant. So, Dogs fans, opposition fans, football fans, make sure that you jump onto Inside the Kennel. Remember, we've got Mattie's Facebook group there as well. I'll put all the links in the description down below, so you'll have easy access to that. But, Mattie, I look forward to having many more chats during the year. And can I book you in for the 2026 Bulldogs team preview now?
Lock that in. Can't wait. That sounds great. And can I just say, if you've got any questions, once you've watched this video, just type it in onto the YouTube below, and I jump on. I'm a massive nerd, as you probably can tell, when it comes to footy. So I'm happy to answer some of those key questions as the months roll on. So come back to this, review it, and I'll jump on quite regularly.
You are an absolute gentleman and a scholar, Mattie. So thanks again for coming on, mate. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Next up, we've got another club. I won't mention which club it is now, but we've got another big content creator coming up to talk about their favourite team. So take care, guys, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, Mattie. Bye.
See you guys. Thanks again.